mysterious. Well, boys and girls, when people say that a body hasn't been found concerning Bigfoot, well, we all know, well, those of us who know, no, that's just not the case. There's bodies. And today we have a story of just that. This one comes to us, well, wait a minute, before we jump in, if you haven't already, smash that subscribe button for me and let me know where you're listening from down in the comments. I always love seeing where in the world everybody's at, where you're listening from. I do appreciate that. Well, let's get into today's Bigfoot story. This one comes to us from Wilfredo and Helena. My wife and I were returning home on the interstate one night in December of 2009. This was up in Massachusetts. In the distance, as we were coming up a grade, we saw a semi on the shoulder with its flashers on. As we got closer, there was quite a bit of blood on the pavement and some pieces of debris from the truck, like broken lenses and a mirror lying on the road. We were driving quite slowly as we were approaching the truck and had noticed something on the shoulder, which we believed to be a bear or a moose or something. Suffice to say, it was something very large, and it appeared that it was what had collided with the truck up ahead. We pulled up on the truck and got out. Walking over to the cab, we saw the driver was still inside. I grabbed the side rail and jumped up on the fuel tank to check on the driver. He was sitting in the seat with his head in his hands, still behind the wheel of the truck. I tapped on the window and asked him if he was all right. It took him a few seconds to respond, but he rolled the window down. I could see that he was in shock and didn't answer right away. About a minute later, while I was telling my wife to call the police, he said to me, "I just crashed into a damn Bigfoot that was running across the road back there, chasing a doe." I said to him, "You hit what?" He repeated himself, saying that he had just demolished the front of his truck, hitting a Bigfoot that was crossing the highway. I climbed down from the cab and walked to the front of the truck. The lights were still on, the entire grill, front bumper, and hood was buckled inward. The left front fender and headlamp were demolished. The truck was leaking water from what appeared to be a radiator. It was about 10 minutes later when a trooper came roaring down the highway and an ambulance soon followed. At this time, the driver still had not come out of the cab. He was sitting there in silence, holding his head in his hands. As the trooper drove up, we told him briefly what we knew, and he jumped out to talk to the man. Moments later, a second ambulance came to the scene as well as another trooper. The driver was now out of the truck and talking. About 300 feet behind the truck, an animal was on the side of the road. My wife, Helena, stayed by our car while one of the troopers and I started walking back to it. He had his gun drawn and told me to stay behind him. He said that if the animal's still alive, it may jump up and try to hurt us. The trooper had a powerful flashlight with an expandable beam. I was walking maybe 15 feet behind him as we approached the animal. As soon as the light hit it, I saw the blackened face of a gorilla-type beast with blood pouring out of its mouth. I actually saw one of his eyes blink and his hand move slightly. I knew immediately that this was no moose or anything else that's known in these woods. It's exactly as the driver had said. he had crashed into a Bigfoot with his truck. The trooper told me to go back and stand by the truck. As soon as I had reached the truck, he fired 3 rounds at point-blank range into the creature to put him down. A few minutes later, he took a report from us as to what the driver had told us. We overheard as well what the driver was saying to the ambulance crew and the other trooper. He said that he was fairly certain that he was going to hit the deer and was trying all elusive measures in a short period of time not to do so, saying that the trailer brakes had locked up and the trailer had begun to swing wide when all of a sudden this Bigfoot was now squarely in front of the truck and unavoidable. When he said he hit the beast, he wasn't wearing his seatbelt, and the impact caused him to fly forward, smashing the windshield with his forehead, which explained to me why he was sitting there in a daze holding his head. But thank God he wasn't cut or bleeding. As we were leaving, the ambulance crew was putting the man in the back of their vehicle. Helena and I took off. And I couldn't help but think, what on God's green earth could be that big that could stop an 18-wheeler in its tracks like that? Well, that beast that was laying on the side of the road was no small thing. And here's Helena's account. I was asking Wilfredo what he had seen because I'd stayed by the car. I saw the trooper fire the shots and only heard the conversations. Wilfredo told me that it was a Bigfoot and it was still alive, but badly bleeding, which was why the trooper had decided to put it down. I said to Wilfredo that I couldn't wait to hear what the news reports would have to say about this the following day. But when the morning had come, there was nothing. We sat by the TV all day, waiting, and nothing at all was said. The next day, Wilfredo actually called the local news station and inquired about not hearing the story. They said they knew nothing about it, nothing about such a story, and asked Wilfredo what he had seen. He must have spent 30 minutes on the phone with them, recounting the entire story. The next day, again, nothing. Nothing was heard or said on the news. Nothing in the local papers the entire week. We both now know what we had seen and heard, and yet not a word was spoken about it. We thought that surely there'd be a great interest in such a story, but it was never told. Well, what is the deal here? We get Bigfoot bodies, and is there like some mass conspiracy to cover these things up? Where'd they do it? Where'd they put it? Where'd they go with it? Well, your guess is as good as mine. If you've heard stories like this, drop it down in the comments. I've heard stories, where even military personnel have been called in. I think I read a story on this channel. Military personnel or something of the like was called in to remove a Bigfoot body. I've heard other stories too where Bigfoot were killed and rounded up, and obviously all the evidence was hidden from public. Your guess is as good as mine as to why they have to cover this stuff up. Nothing but theories is all I've heard. No real good reasons. Well, anyway, if you've had an encounter with a Bigfoot or anything mysterious, you know what to do. Drop me an email at cryptidmysterious@gmail.com, and I'll see you in the next one.